This podcast was brought to you in part by Synergy, the exclusive wetsuit partner of USA Triathlon, home of the world's fastest wetsuit, the Hybrid EFX. Go check it out. Visit their website at synergywetsuits.com to learn more about the Hybrid EFX. Use code STUPID20, that's STUPID 20, for 20% off your online purchase and feel the Synergy difference. Thanks so much to Synergy for making this episode and this year of the podcast recording possible. How's it going, everybody? And welcome back to the Stupid Questions podcast, another episode. Today, we're going to be talking with Stefan Laursen from Synergy Wetsuits. He's the founder. So Synergy at Wetsuits as a company has emerged from humble beginnings as a global leader in triathlon gear. We're going to be talking about Stefan's journey at starting at just 13 when he started crafting his own wetsuit for his very first triathlon, and then fast forward to 16 when he became a professional, and now to today. Synergy is the official swim partner of the USA Triathlon and is known for innovative designs to enhance athlete performance. So stay tuned. We're going to uncover a lot of his story behind this trailblazing brand. So let's go ahead and dive in. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Stefan. Well, great. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Look forward to diving into all kinds of different stuff, just hearing a little bit about who you are as a person and the things that you've done in life. But the first question I'd love to get started off with is a third-person question for yourself. So who is Stefan?
Oh, existential questions right off the bat. It's a little early for that, isn't
it? How's the weather there in Vegas?
It's a little cloudy. It's nice. Yeah, it's all right. Yeah, I mean, we're still discovering that question, I think. But ultimately, I think a question like that is probably best answered in your history.
Yeah, sure.
And I grew up in Denmark, and my mom's American, my dad was Danish.
Okay.
And I grew up near like a badminton hall, and I spent so many hours as a child training I think there was something about when you're a little kid and you don't feel you're good at anything, I decided to just apply myself to sports and see if I could use my willpower to develop myself into a good athlete. And it worked out in badminton. And then because I built such a big engine from age 10,
sure.
By the time I was 16, I was able to become a professional triathlete.
Okay. Yeah, pretty young.
Yeah, and so at 13, a friend of mine invited me to do a triathlon, and I didn't really know how to swim properly. I could do like a breaststroke or something, but I couldn't really do like a competitive swim.
Sure.
And this was Denmark, so freezing temperatures, and we'd be practicing he had this little tiny pool, and we quickly realized we needed to have a wetsuit. And I asked my parents if they would sponsor me one, and they were academics and very frugal.
Yeah, and they said,
I don't know that we could really afford one at the time.
Yeah.
But I went to a Waldorf school, and we were making costumes for a play.
Okay.
And I asked my teacher if she could help me make a wetsuit instead.
Wow.
And so she laid out a pattern and showed me how to do it. And it was actually quite fun.
Yeah.
And so it was all hand sewn, but it was made really, really thick.
Yeah, sure.
It was actually the only material I could get my hands on.
Just like really thick. How many mils thick are we talking?
It was like, I think it was 8 or 10 mils.
Yeah,
it
wow.
was super thick, yeah. And so it wasn't that, I mean, I had to make the arms really, really thin. So I made it with different materials. But it was like a surfboard, and back then there wasn't much regulation around this.
Yeah. So maximum buoyancy.
Yeah, so I didn't lose anything in the swim really. I mean, I kind of, and it was only 1K, so you couldn't lose too much.
Yeah, sure.
But then I won it on the bike and the run, and that was the Nordic Danish Championships.
Oh wow!
And so at 13, that was a big feat.
Yeah, that is huge.
And this is back in the 80s, and then. Then from then on, I just started dedicating myself to triathlon more and more. I would play badminton in the winter, and then because it's a big indoor sport in Denmark, Olympic sport, and then I would come to the States and race most of the summers because we had in the US we had this culture of it was really good weather to race here.
Sure.
Unlike Denmark, you'd have all these kind of rainy
Yeah.
days. It
Lots of
wasn't that
cloud
fun.
cover.
Yeah, and in the States, you could make money at a very. So for me, it beat like having a paper route or something.
Yeah.
And back in the 80s and 90s, there were prize money in a lot of small races.
Sure.
So all summer, I would just rake up as many races as I could.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was kind of that was the start. And I think when you're very young, that kind of sets the tone for your life and the person you become.
Yeah, for sure. So a couple of questions. One, in just because of my lack of education, what is a Waldorf school? Like, what does that actually mean?
So Waldorf school is it's a German founded school that has a lot of creativity and acting and singing, and
Okay.
it's a little bit light on academics, but not really. But it just has all these other elements. So you have a lot of strings to play on when you graduate.
Yeah.
Because I think you're a much more rounded person.
Yeah, you experience a lot of different things from a young age.
You've experienced a lot of things. You know how to draw. You know how to paint. And so the drawing came in really handy being a product designer.
Yeah.
I don't have any formal education of it, but it just started with making a product I needed for triathlon. And then it became like an augmentation for swimming, designing really fast wetsuits.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually think it's a good place to start with any kind of product where you're trying to solve a problem.
Sure.
And especially since I wasn't such a good swimmer, I had to develop products that could compensate.
Mm-hmm.
So the main issue with swimming is buoyancy and being really level in the water.
Mm-hmm.
So I would design a wetsuit to do that for me. So it would be almost like a big surfboard that would come from the chest all the way down to your ankles. Yeah. And then knowing that water engulfs you, it made sense to wrap that buoyancy around the midsection of your body, especially around the lower back. Mm-hmm. And that also prevented snaking, which is another issue that a lot of
people have,
non-swimmers have. Even good swimmers have it a little bit. So the wetsuit became this kind of corrective suit in a way.
Right.
And then balancing out how and where you put the super flexible materials so that there's no restriction, but you're still gaining all the buoyancy that you need. That became,
big focus.
Paramount in that. But I think the biggest advantage that Synergy has in general is that we've been at it for 40 years.
Yeah.
So the relationships we've established with factories and the material providers, that's bar none.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess talk to me a little bit about the manufacturing process, because I know, you started doing this when you were 13. Fast forward a little bit, and then I do want to come back to childhood a little bit, but I'm curious because we're already on this topic. Go back to like the time you made that first wetsuit, and then how much time elapsed until this is a formal company, and then you're going somewhere to have these things manufactured, where you're working with a team and a production line and a bill of materials and all that stuff.
Yeah, so I made that first wetsuit for my when I was 13,
mm-hmm.
and then other athletes started asking about it. This was before there was regulation on thickness of wetsuits, and so I started making it for other racers at the time, and that became very beneficial. And so I would make like maybe 5-10 suits a year.
Okay.
And then, but it was all hand stitched.
Yeah.
It wasn't, and I would take measurements. It wasn't really my forte, so to speak, as far as like I wasn't trained for this. Mm-hmm. So then I got other people involved helping me make it that were like in the garment industry. Yeah. And then eventually I made the connections with the factories that at the time were making Quintana Roo and Ironman wetsuits.
Yeah.
Then later, I was racing in Australia and New Zealand as a pro. I was living over there, and I met this guy who was making something called speed suits. And together we made Orca.
Oh, wow.
And so Orca became really the biggest brand in wetsuits.
So you were a partner in the original founding of Orca?
So we partnered that, and I did the US, and he did the the world distribution, and we worked together on designs.
Oh, wow.
And then when it got bought out by Orbea, 2XU, and I went back to Synergy. That's what I called it back when I had started it. And a few other brands were kind of formed after that split.
Sure.
And then we had some issues with the financial crisis, and we were
2008.
Yeah, so during that period, there was a lot of bike shops that we were selling to that went out of business, and many of the big boxes didn't pay for a long time. So it was a difficult period, and we ended up on Amazon because of that, because then that was a place where we got paid right away.
Yeah. Need the cash. Cash flow is king.
Yeah. And so we were one of the few who didn't file for bankruptcy and all that stuff, and kept our employees employed. And I mean, we were down to the point though where we were renting out our house to make payroll.
Wow.
But we were just doing everything we could to stay the course. And that's been a double-edged sword being on Amazon. And in one way, shipping and all that has been very easy.
Yeah.
But another way, we became a little bit anonymous in the sport, in a sense. And now we're changing that. So we've actually never done marketing. We really came from the product will speak for itself approach.
Yeah.
But we realized that other brands were really making a lot of headway with marketing, and that we had to get on that bandwagon too and get known for what we do.
For sure. So does that mean like that you're changing your approach? Are you off of Amazon now? Like you're no longer selling on Amazon?
No, we're not off of Amazon, but we're pivoting more towards our own website and
more D2C stuff.
Working with partners, and Amazon has a lot of limitations.
Sure.
So we're just focused. We're just so brand focused and product focused right now that we also want people to understand what a game changer our high-end wetsuits are, and also our clothing and what we're doing.
Yeah.
Because it is groundbreaking in some respects, and it's happening to the point where we're now working with a USAT development team and a national team and helping design innovations that go into the Olympics and try and give the US athletes, an advantage.
Yeah, for sure. So talk to me about some of that groundbreaking stuff, like maybe some of it you're not allowed to talk to, but is there anything specifically that you're doing that's like really different out of the box?
We have some things going on with materials for clothing, especially.
Okay.
With the wetsuits, the hybrid have really. So we went to Phoenix and Tucson to visit with the national team and the development team and give them wetsuits to try, and everyone was setting best times in the pool with it, and they have all experienced most of the other brands over the years. Okay. And so for them, the thing we kept hearing was that this is a game changer. I've never had a wetsuit just like this. And what was cool was we were able to compare different suits right there in real time and clock the times, and that was very gratifying for me to see. We've been in multiple magazine tests over the years and come out on top. But to actually be there in the pool with the top athletes in the world and doing it, it was something. Yeah.
So I want to touch a little bit on just kind of what makes you who you are, because you talked about making it through kind of the 2008 financial crisis and, renting out your house to make payroll. Like those are highly stressed times. And then you also were talking about just like your desire and love for competition. So I think all of these things are a little bit connected, at least. Where does that come from? Because you said your parents were both academics. Were they highly competitive? Was this something this was like Stefan's thing, or where does this all come from?
Yeah. No, I think it comes from my parents were just the opposite, really. But I really relish competition. I love it. I still race. I love the idea of high performance and how we can push each other to that next level.
Sure.
I love the rivalry of it, and also working towards a goal, having something that is tangible in a sense, because in life the goalpost keeps getting moved forward all the time, and in business it's a little bit the same, but in racing, there is a finite finish line, and you have to solve a lot of problems in a race. It's not going to be a smooth line.
Yeah, sure.
I think we all dream of that perfect race one day where it just all flows, and it almost never happens. But that's okay, because I think it's the obstacle that's the way, in a sense. You learn all these lessons as you go, and then you go back in the lab and fix it, and then you go back out and do better next time. And I love that.
Yeah.
I love that process. I love the taking out 6-8 months to train for something that you feel that accomplishment at the end. And I think as I gotten older, I'm more focused now on the process. I'm more focused on executing the plan. And then one of our athletes, Josiah Middag, says the hay is in the barn, meaning that, he's planted all the seeds through all his base training, he's done all the work, and now he harvested, he's put it in, he's ready for go time, and that's how it is. It's having expectations for a race is kind of like you're almost setting yourself up for failure. It's way better not having many expectations at all, but executing the plan that you've been preparing for. And I think that's true in life. And it's certainly true in business, that you set out a plan. You say, okay, we're going to make these kind of products. We're going to make this kind of promotion around it. We're going to do all these things and line it all up and then execute on it. And it's the execution that means if you're going to be successful or not.
Yeah, for sure. So how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
So I'm 50. I'm 54 yesterday.
Okay, yeah. Happy birthday.
Yeah,
Belated
thank you.
happy birthday to you, by the way. Yeah, that's super awesome. So how long were you a professional athlete then, from 16 to?
Till 32.
Okay.
I regret that I retired so early. I was under this old stupid mindset that I had plateaued and that you couldn't really move off. That 28 was like your peak years. That was kind of the prevailing thought at the time, and it was completely wrong.
Yeah, interesting how times change.
Yeah, and I also think that at the time there wasn't the kind of knowledge and coaching available that you have today. Like, I would have trained completely different had I known what I know now. We didn't do Zone 2 training like mad at all.
Yeah, it was like
we were training like we were racing, and looking back at that, it was a miracle that we had the results we had. Because we would have done so much better and had so much more fun training so much easier. Yeah,
it's interesting. So I've done an episode with Mark Allen and Scott Tinley, and talking to them kind of around those same types of things. It's interesting just how the mindset has shifted around age of peak, but also like the types of Zone 2 training. And I hope it continues to build and grow in that respect, because I still think we hold some old baggage from the old day that's damaging people to a degree. Yeah, it's pretty interesting, fascinating to see that progression.
People were, and I for sure, were perpetually overtrained. Because we're just having way too much high intensity. And it was causing injuries. And,
Heart issues.
I mean, I had injuries for like 15 years where I just had the same chronic tendonitis. And I was on the Danish Olympic team, but it kept me from racing in the Olympics because I just couldn't run. And so there was a lot of things like that where later, and you learn how to fix that with some simple exercises, and you learn that training completely different and not as intuitive as you would have thought would have been the absolute secret sauce to much higher level.
Yeah, for sure. So you said 13 was that first triathlon race, and then you mentioned a little bit about how your mindset was becoming more settled on, like, oh, well, if I can just will myself to be an athlete, like, I want to make that happen. So when and why did that become like a focus? And then start to talk to me about that process from 13 to 16, and then your athletic journey. And then I want to overlay that with the business journey and kind of bring them together toward the end, if that's not too long of a question.
Yeah, it's a big question. I mean, it's it's interesting as a dad, I can see if my kids have an inner fire for something or not.
Feed it.
And sometimes you wonder where that inner fire came from in myself. But I've just always had this drive to, for racing and for training and for business. And also there's no sense of defeat ever, even if things don't work out. It's just, it's a bump in the road until the next thing. And I think having that kind of mental outlook is paramount if you want to have, success is such a wide word, right?
Sure.
But if you want to be moving forward with your life, I think at some point, everybody's had big things happen in their life where you get to these points where you can either let them take you down or you can stay and wallow in them and not move off the place you're at, or you can decide to take massive action to move forward. And I think that's the only way to go.
Yeah.
The other options are not really options because they're not going to take your life anywhere you want to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are some of those big moments that you like hit and you decided to get around and get through?
Yeah, I went through a pretty awful divorce that took 4 years and really challenged me at every step. And I think it's probably it's probably a good thing that these things happen because that's when you really grow. And the type of challenges that you get in life like that are usually the exact kind of things you need. Because anytime we're challenged, it's usually because we don't know properly how to deal with something, or it's a weakness in us that we have to address.
Sure.
Because otherwise it wouldn't be a challenge. So you can make that, you can kind of defer like a direct parallel to sports, right? If running is your weakness, you're always going to be going like, I'm challenged here, but then you know what to work on.
Yeah.
Or if you're transition or, and you can, I feel like triathlon is an incredible, there's something about the symbolism in triathlon and life in general that kind of goes together. You have to have momentum to make it over those obstacles. You have to be able to endure. You have to be able to fuel. You have to be able to recover. There's so many elements that are exactly the same in your general life, and sometimes we forget that, and so we don't refuel. We don't
rest,
recover. We're just on to the next thing. So we live in that perpetual overtrained state instead of bringing ourselves into balance the way we would if we worked with a coach, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's a great parallel, especially in the world of working, whether you're a business founder, entrepreneur, boss, whatever, because thinking about how we do training blocks, we kind of ramp up and then we have a recovery week. I really do see that reflected in my daily work life, because some days they're not as busy and some days are just slam hard against the wall. There's not a waking moment where you're not doing something, but then taking those recoveries just as important. And I really struggle with this mindset still that is prevailed in America of like, the person who's working on the line mindset, 9 to 5, go, 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 don't stop till the clock stops type of a situation. And as humans, we're not built that way. We're cyclical. We have ups and downs. We have energy levels that, gain and wane. So it's interesting you said that. I was just reflecting on that a little bit.
Yeah.
So then you were 13, you got to 16, you became a professional athlete. When you first got that mindset, because you said you were really driven and you were like, I'm going to will myself to be this, was there a time when you started to like really believe like, okay, like I am this person now, like I've willed it to happen, this is my identity? Do you remember that starting to click?
Yes, I do remember that. So what happens is when you're that young and you're racing against kind of your idols. Back then, that was Scott Tinley and Dave Scott and Mark Allen and those guys. It was great towing the line with them. And then they'd always smoke me in the swim. I still wasn't a great swimmer.
Sure.
And then I realized I was closing the gap on the bike with them. and then it would just come down to the run. And that was an incredible experience to see that they were just right up there, that it was more in my mind,
Yeah.
Closing that gap than it was physically closing that gap. Yeah. And then, yeah, I just loved going out and racing. And sure, I made lots of mistakes. One time I forgot my wetsuit for a race, that wasn't supposed to be a wetsuit race.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then it was, and it was like, God, this is the stupidest thing. I make wetsuits,
Yeah.
and I didn't bring one. Always bring a wetsuit.
How old were you
no
at that
matter
point?
what.
Like how far in your career?
Oh, I was probably 18, and it was this Stone Mountain in Georgia.
Oh yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And I used to do the USTA course, or it was a Bud Light series.
Okay. Yeah.
That was like the big series of the day back then.
Yeah.
And in '96, I was second in that whole thing.
Wow.
Behind Scott Tinley.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that was also the national pro championship. So that was like, it's funny, you look back and you maybe your best races weren't what you thought were going to be your best races, or you had all these other races that went really well, but they didn't count the same way. They didn't have the cachet than like a U.S. Pro National Championships has. Yeah.
So you continued to build, and then you said you even got on to the Danish Olympic team. I mean, that's huge. It's not just like we can't just gloss over that. Like these are really big things. So how did that happen?
So in Denmark, you at the time got invited to be on the national team.
Okay.
So you got selected as such, and then that was for the 2000 Olympics. So we were all out gathering ITU points.
Yep.
And I would just only choose ITU races that were wetsuit legal. I wouldn't even bother with a non-wetsuit race. Yeah. Because I would come out, if it was non-wetsuit, I'd come out in group 3, and then I would be the only person pulling everybody together into the peloton. And by then, I'd just be absolutely wasted and didn't have any legs left for a good run.
Yeah.
But with a wetsuit, I could come out in group 2. And then usually there were other people who would help bring us together. Yeah. And I used to race a lot with Jimmy Riccicello, who was a good racer in the States at that time. Okay. I think he was on the national team here. And we were very similar on the swim, and on the bike, so we'd like pull each other together up to the main group and then duke it out on the run later. Yeah.
So how old were you, like, when you started to make the transition from, like, did you gain in distance? Did you start doing longer course races?
No, I won the world's toughest race in Tahoe back in 1992, so it's a long time ago. But I was still only training for Olympic races, so I didn't have the distance in me. And it really took a lot out of me. I had to go to the hospital and everything afterwards. So I just decided that long distance wasn't really for me. And it's also, you can train for so many months and then not have a good race. Yeah. And it's not like you can just do 5 other races that year. One of my good buddies, Eric Haar, he's the national age group champion for in the US for Ironman distances. Okay. And he's dedicated himself for like 4 or 5 years to try and win the world championships in Kona. And God bless him. I think he will, because he's put in the work. He's been incredibly diligent and disciplined. Yeah. But he's had to endure where you were fully prepared only to get a cold 2 days before the race, and
beat you up.
Then you finished 10th. Had a subpar race, but you were like 20 minutes off or 15 minutes off winning that thing. Yeah. And the cold made all the difference, of course.
Yeah, that's wild.
So I ended up racing shorter and shorter. I think that was more high intensity, shorter swim, for me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So these days then, what are you racing? Because you said you're still racing for fun.
Yeah, so I like doing Xterra races because I don't have to compare to my old splits. Yeah. You're running trails. There's no running splits you can compare to. Yeah. Your mountain biking is not the same. And with mountain biking, you can keep improving because it's such a skill thing.
Oh, yeah, so technique-based.
Yeah, and everybody sucks at swimming, so I'm usually out of the water as one of the first.
Nice. We'll quote that
also,
one. Yeah.
To me, it's a lot like what triathlon used to be. We used to go to all these exotic places. That's how it was back in the 80s and 90s. Racing was at resort towns and things, and they were beautiful,
Yeah.
and it wasn't so commercialized.
Yeah.
Like today, you come in and it's like a machine,
Yeah.
and people are paying thousands of dollars for entries, and it's just kind of it's just lost a lot of its allure that it had.
Yeah.
Back in the day, it was like adventurous, and so Xterra still offers that. There's a race in Moorea on Tahiti
Wow.
in October I want to go to, and it's just like that's the secret sauce to having a great
Yeah.
time with triathlon, I think, is making it into a lifestyle thing where you're also going kite surfing
Yeah.
and you spend an extra week mountain biking the course, and yeah.
Do you think that allure will ever come back to like triathlon as most people know it today?
Triathlon is becoming very fragmented now, because it's no longer one thing. You have ITU with draft legal.
Mm-hmm.
You have the super tries that are the short formats, and they are fun.
Mm-hmm.
They're also way more
Commercialized production.
yeah, and they're very viewer friendly.
Mm-hmm.
So I do like that aspects. Then you have the Ironmans, which is a completely different thing, and then you have now swim runs, and and in a way it's great. You could like it to like you have mountain biking and road cycling and gravel. It's all cycling, but it's very different. But for a small sport where what do we have? Maybe 1 million triathletes worldwide. It's not that many people.
Yeah.
Fragmenting the sport further means that you have smaller participation numbers, and race directors have to rationalize how to put together these events so they can make money. And now there's this new trend happening where big venture capital firms are buying up brands and buying up events and everything. And honestly, that piece,
It's a little scary.
I think, is always trouble.
Yeah, I've had a concern. I've been worrying because, like, when I look around just from a business perspective, let's just talk about garment for a second, because there's a lot of new brands that are kind of popping up, nutrition companies, and a lot of these products don't have very high margins, and so the prices are being pushed up. But then I'm just wondering, I wish I could see everyone's balance sheet to see how many companies are in the red and how long their runway is, because if those things do blow up in our face, then it could really hurt participation. It would be like a storm hits the industry and a bunch of consolidation happens, and maybe we get back to just a few races and a few brands. And I don't know, it's interesting. But what's your take on that? Like, how do you weather that type of a storm? What are you thinking?
I mean, I see some of my own competitors, and I wonder how they're breaking a profit because I know how much money is invested in them. So obviously, they have the deep pockets to weather or make long-term investments.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that it makes a lot of sense. And the reason is that triathlon still has this strange thing that I don't think a lot of sports have, where nearly 50% of the participants are new year after year.
Mm.
So you have maybe people come into triathlon for just 2-3 years, and then you have a very small, maybe only 10% of triathletes, in my opinion, that are the core group that have been in the sport for many, many years. A lot of people identify with being a triathlete, but then won't race for several years and then maybe do an occasional race. And a lot of people, it's almost like a rite of passage to do one, like running a marathon.
Yeah, become an Ironman.
Yeah, so it's very different from other sports. It's not like a rowing or something where you're in a club, you're doing this thing for the longest time.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of interesting things with with triathlons like that. So it requires some retention, right? I think that type of thing always comes from the grassroots. It comes from the athletes themselves. But we were at Endurance Exchange. That USAT puts on, and it was great hearing stories from the race directors who were still trying to stay independent and create really cool events.
Unique
and
experiences.
So I think they're out there. We probably need our magazine to help dictate a little bit of that culture and highlight some of these really cool events that are still happening.
The USAT magazine, you're saying?
Triathlete magazine,
Yeah,
USAT. Yeah,
all
I
of them.
think you're right about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that there's anything that the brands are responsible for to help generate that longevity of the athlete who comes in and is like, oh, maybe I just want to do one or two? Do you think that there's any responsibility in those brands to increase that timeline, or is that even possible?
I don't know if the brands can do much, but we try to support as much as we can. Like
Sure.
our affiliation with USAT and our primary motivation is to try and help the development teams to help kids get into proper equipment, so that's not a burden, to provide an advantage to the national team and the Olympic team, and to help the Paralympians. We're doing something that I don't think has been done before, where we're custom making suits for our Paralympian team.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we're not doing them from scratch, but we're
Modifying.
augmenting the suits to help with their augmentations and their disabilities, and that's kind of a passion of ours. We love that. We love to be part of that piece, and I think it helps all around. All the support we can give to the sport helps grow, and so if everybody's doing this, like with anything in life, I think that you put out all those seeds for something positive to happen.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you guys just started that partnership with USA2, right? USAT, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Does it have, if you're allowed to say, like a multi-year, I mean, you're talking about the Olympics and stuff, and that's 2028. I'm assuming what you're talking about is the Olympics for 2028 here in the US, because that's been a big thing on their radar. Is your partnership plan to extend that and beyond?
Yes. I mean, we'd like to be a long-term partner.
Yeah.
We'll have to see how everything goes, but so far it's been delightful, and they've kept us incredibly busy. So we have to hire a few more people to keep up with it.
Yeah. That's really neat. Have you had that long-term relationship? Like, did you know Victoria or whoever the liaison is that you've been working with? Was that a long-term relationship that just kind of...
No, we haven't had this relationship with them before, but they've been on our radar for a long time. I did do a similar thing when I had Orca back in the day. But I think we were actually the first ones to create uniforms and everything for USAT at the time.
That's awesome.
So back then it wasn't as polished as it is today.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they run a tight machine. They're a great team.
Yeah. Yeah, Victoria's great. She was, just for a little bit of a plug, whenever I wanted to start this podcast, she had just become the CEO, and I cold emailed her and was like, hey, I'd love to meet you, and then got in touch with her assistant, and after a few go-rounds, got a meeting with her and told her about the idea of starting a podcast, and then she encouraged it, and then she was like number 4 or 5 on the podcast of guests, so shout out to her. She's really doing what she can. I know she's super busy and taking the time to make that happen. That was a humbling and great experience for me personally. So they're a good team.
They got a lot going on. Yeah,
for sure. So I'd love to talk a little bit about going from you're 32, you're deciding to make an exit out of the professional career as an athlete. Obviously, I would assume that was a difficult position to be in and a big shift to make. But where were you at mindset-wise as you're also dealing with the business world and entrepreneur world, and when did Synergy kind of come into birth with that?
Yeah, so it was at the time when I was having kids, and Synergy was getting really busy, and so it was hard to balance everything.
Yeah.
You get married and you had kids and you have a business, and then trying to find, carve out 15, 18 hours of training a week. That's
a lot.
It's a challenge. Yeah. So I just felt it was time to shift my focus, but it sat in me for at least 10 more years where it's like, God, I wish kind of I hadn't, because you could feel that your body still had the ability. Yeah. And I mean, even today, I feel like, when you're in good shape, you're like, man, you're not that far away from what it was. Yeah. What would it be like had you just kept with it? Yeah.
You look pretty ripped. Like, are you working out every day? Because I mean,
I work out every day, but I'm just I don't know exactly what causes it, but I build muscle very, very easily, which is not the best for a triathlete, because you don't want to have that weight when you're running.
Yeah, sure.
So it is a little strange in a weird way. When I was racing pro, I get pulled out for drug tests all the
Yeah,
time
people's like, this
because
doesn't
I
make
look so
sense. He
different.
looks juiced
Yeah,
up.
I totally. I mean, you like when the camera would we'd all be on the pylon standing before the swim, and they'd be like one super thin guy, and then Arnold, and then it looked out of yeah. It was so weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever consider getting into like professional bodybuilding then because of that
No, I should have been
propensity?
a wrestler. That would have
Oh
been.
yeah, yeah. You can really maneuver and get around. How tall are you?
So I'm 5'10".
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
yeah, wrestlers a
And I'm
little small.
160 pounds now, but I was actually 152 when I was
Yeah,
racing. And that makes
yeah.
sense. Yeah.
What was the best race you ever had?
Um, it was a race in Santos, Brazil.
Okay,
And there's a funny story here.
okay, love it.
And I at the Mark Allen were there. There's a lot of big names
Yeah,
there, and we it went really well with the swim. I got up some good feet and came out. And it was not. It was a draft. It wasn't a draft legal race, which was perfect for me. So I got off the bike second, and then it was me and this other guy racing. And then in Santos, there'd be like 200,000 spectators. It was incredible.
wow,
So it
that's
was just like
huge.
being at the Tour de France in a sense,
Yeah,
and something that you don't really experience in other, a little bit maybe in Europe, but definitely not in the
yeah, for
States.
sure.
And we just have this epic final sprint to the finish.
Wow.
And yeah, it was just such a good day. And then I like, it's not 20 years ago, but maybe 15 years passes, and I've been telling the story about how this race ended and everything. And then one day I was moving, and I found this big box of all my old trophies, and I picked this one up. I'm like, oh my God, this was a big, beautiful glass trophy from Santos.
Yeah,
They know how to make trophies
yeah.
there. And I'm looking at it, and I'm going like, third place. And all along, I thought I came in second.
Oh my goodness.
I was like, what the hell? Just the story got rosier over the
Yeah,
years.
yeah. That happens. The things we tell ourselves, man, it's crazy. I've had a few of those experiences in my life.
So it was such a wake-up call. It's like, oh my God, oh, you're right. There was this one guy ahead of
Yeah.
us that I forgot about. Yeah.
Yeah, it was still a glorious finish. You got on the podium. That's amazing.
Yeah, somehow I just totally sweat that part out. And I've been telling everybody I finished second in that race,
Yeah,
but it was really third. Yeah.
yeah. That's so crazy.
So we were sprinting for the
Yeah.
podium. Yeah.
Is there a video of this somewhere that we could find and like post it?
I don't know because it's in Brazil.
Yeah. I might have to do a little hunting because that would be
I also
amazing.
say, I do have some videos from other stuff, some of it on Betamax that I could never play on anything.
Yeah,
But when you look back at it, it's not high definition. It's really grainy,
yeah,
and you go like, "Oh my God, was it that long ago?"
yeah.
Yeah,
Like
and the
museum
bikes look
antiques.
different. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's funny to watch. Yeah.
that's awesome.
So
So then you started Synergy, from my understanding, was out of Orca, correct?
no, I mean, I had originally had Synergy when that was what I called it when I was a kid, and I
Okay.
made that first brand. And I had an interesting business model with it because when I was this was like in the 80s and 90s. I had my friend Frank. He would go to all the triathlons, and he'd just bring a sample of the wetsuit and show it off, and people would just sign up right there, and he would take a 10% deposit, and that would be his commission.
Okay.
And then he would send the order straight to the factory, and when they had 100 suits, they would just send them out directly to all the
Oh
customers.
wow.
So I didn't really have anything to do other than just change the design every now and then.
Yeah.
So it was like the perfect business setup at the
Yeah,
time.
yeah. That's amazing. Where was the
And
factory, really quick? Sorry, I wanna.
then I got greedy and stupid.
Okay.
And I started having mass production of it, and that's kind of when you get in trouble
Yeah.
because now you have to have inventory, you have to have an
Line of
office,
credit.
you have to do all these things,
Yeah.
and I didn't make any more money at it. But it also became more and more of a life passion, to just make high performance gear because it is interesting to test it and come up with ways to make it better. and I think it's something that's sometimes missing when bigger corporations buy into brands and all that, is that you think that with it comes a lot in R&D, but it doesn't, because if you don't have that fire from the business owner, from the person designing it, who also have a little bit of a selfish thing about trying to make yourself faster, then you end up getting just products made by designers or you know, people who maybe not have the deep insight to what actually works, you know, what's actually going to make the difference. And so I look at other wetsuits and I go, it's not made by somebody who actually swims, you know, many times, or doesn't know what the materials do to make the difference. And that's, you know, that's what it is. But how do you interact with the product nowadays? Because you're still racing, so like, are you using it yourself? You said you're doing stuff with the development team. What does your process look like, and then where are you getting them made? Yeah, so we have factories in 5 different countries, and one of the reasons that we're very excited to get involved with other elite athletes. I mean, we've always had elite athletes come to us. We just never paid anyone in the past or done anything like that. But we've had like Ironman world champion Frederick Van Leer just call us up and said, I tested everybody's wetsuit. I want to use yours. Nice. And you don't have to pay me or do anything, and I'll provide all the pictures for free. I mean, that we've had that several times, and that's been amazing.
Yeah, that must feel good.
But I like to get more than just my own input, because I know what works for me, but I also need to know what works for other different types of athletes, because we make 5 different wetsuits, and so we're making them for different types of triathletes. Not everybody is the same. Not every performance. Let's call it a performance enhancement that we're looking for. It might be different from one type of body to another. An elite swimmer needs something a little different than somebody who, like say a very good cyclist or runner who has heavier legs. They need something different. So you can't make a suit that just fits everything and everybody. And so that's the reason to have these other suits. And then many brands treat this more like price points and upsells. And I think one of the things that we're going to work on this year is to tell that story a little better, so people understand who's it for, who was it made for. Then we work with, there's not that many factories that can make high-end product like this. There's a lot of factories that can make mediocre, an average product. Sure. Yeah. And I almost bought the last wetsuit factory in America.
Oh, really?
Years ago. But the challenge was to find people who could do such precision work.
Yeah, the education and training around that.
It's just a skill that was dying out in America. Yeah. You know, not very many people or children grow up with the idea they want to be a seamstress or factory worker. You know, it's now everybody wants to do something empowering, impactful. Yeah. And this is in a sense, but it's just an industry that's moved overseas. Yeah. And so there are only about 4 or 5 factories that can make that super high-end stuff. Yeah. All the other ones, you know, I wouldn't trust it.
Can you say where your favorite factory is?
Yeah, I mean, China has has 2 very good factories, and Thailand has a good factory. We do some work with obviously Japanese vendors and from Taiwan. Yeah. And that's just where a lot of this stuff is made. Materials and some of the lining comes from Italy, you know.
There's a lot of different pieces.
Where they have an industry that makes some of that. And certainly our apparel comes from there. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
that's really neat. I have quite a different view on China than most people, I think, because most people haven't experienced it. So I've been to China a number of different times, working with different cut and sew shops, the different webbing companies that make, because I used to do like hammocks and the nylon and polyester manufacturers, and some of the coolest people I've ever met were on the factory floor getting to work with people who, they're taking my English, because I obviously don't speak Chinese, and my ideas, and I'm showing them something with my hands, and they translate it over to a few people, and then somebody who's actually sitting down at the sewing machine, these big commercial sewing machines that can like sew through metal, and they're able to put that stuff and make it happen in real time. And that is a skill that, because when I first made my first couple of prototypes, commercial sewing machines are just, it takes a real skill to be able to handle a beast like that. And these guys and girls, mostly girls, would just know how to finesse this material that's super slippery and wetsuit material, and the way that they do the different welding. Like, it takes such a skill, and I wish we could get that back here. Not because like I want to take those jobs away from there necessarily, but there is a sense of pride, I feel like, that comes with being able to look at some raw materials, even if you're working with wood, because I've done that before, like, and putting something together and then stepping back and be like, yeah, I made that. Like, that's such a, it brings a lot of satisfaction and joy. And I think that wasn't translated somehow. It was more important to like get wages down or whatever the reasons were. But I wish we could bring that stuff back.
So we actually own those machines. We have them. Excuse me. We have them in our. Well, we used to have them in our warehouse. Now we have them with a seamstress.
Okay.
But when we work on samples, we do a lot of the work at our warehouse.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of adjustments. We do a lot of things in-house like that.
Mm-hmm.
But to get the production level where the seams are perfect every time, you have to work with people who do that all day long. Yeah. And they are incredible at it. And we, like, in China, they are probably the very best at this. Oh, yeah. And that's why all the high-end factories are there and not somewhere else. We see, I mean, like, we've looked and wanted to move some stuff to, say, the Philippines and other places, because China is a little bit, unstable in some ways, politically. Yeah. And so, but you can just see on the clothing and on the seams, it wasn't made in these high-end factories. It was made in the Philippines. Mm-hmm. And that's a challenge. Yeah. But we're in with some very good people, and they do really good stuff. And I've known them personally for years, the owners, and it's great having those relationships, because when we have a problem, I can call them up personally and we resolve it. Yeah. They're, as you know, they're just people exactly like us,
just working.
Yeah.
Yeah. They got families, they got kids.
That's it. Same problems, same
we're all human. Yeah, it was such an amazing experience for me. It really opened my eyes, because a lot of the people that I went over there, like, they paid for me to stay and paid for my food and board, and like they put me up in the nice rooms in their factories, and they took me out to dinner with their families and me and their cousins and everybody else. And it was such an eye-opening experience, because such a different picture was painted over my eyes of what China is. And cheap isn't China, and you can find cheap anywhere, but what was crazy to me is, like, I found out in the United States I couldn't find quality manufacturing for sewing literally anywhere. It was so hard.
No, it's so hard. And I think there's also another thing, to be honest, that I experienced when I first started, that a lot of factories in the US, they charge a lot, but they're also kind of like in with their current people. And breaking into that is incredibly difficult. Like, when we've looked at doing like a new mold for a better hand paddle, that we've designed this amazing hand paddle, and it's like 8 times the cost to do the same. It's the same machine that does the same thing, and the labor cost is not 8 times, and there's no labor involved in it. You just press a few buttons and you CNC this machine, or this mold. And it just speaks to that maybe there isn't enough competition in that area here. Yeah. But there's also willingness over there to help you get things done that I don't experience here at all. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, especially quick. Yeah, I don't want to continue to preach on this, but I usually, when I talk to people about this, they don't understand. So I feel like I'm connecting with you a little bit. But whenever I would 100%. Try to find people to make stuff here in the U.S., like, I had people destroy thousands of dollars worth of yards of fabric and not even letting me know. And like 3 months had passed, and I've been like banging down their door. But literally, I went to China over the course of, I think it was like 9 days. We made, at 2 different factories, like 7 samples, 1 to 2 a day, and like making it
Yeah.
happen. Like that's a level of grit that like we got to get back here, because it's sad, because the made in the USA sounds cool, and I think it does hold value for some products. It depends on what it is, but the mass majority of it's not here anymore. And like, I mean, like, man, I want to make this stuff back here. I would love to show my kids how to sew two pieces of fabric together and let them know like how to work with a walking foot machine and how you adjust and manipulate. And these are really good skills that, I mean, someday maybe might have to make my own clothes, and this would be a great skill to learn now.
Yeah. Honestly, there is such a thing as, I mean, some of it is coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the way it comes back, to some extent, I don't think ever to a full extent, but to some extent, is that the machinery that can make things is getting better.
Yeah.
And we see that especially with, like when we make our swim skins, we make them seamless.
Yeah.
So they're chemically bonded and not sewn. And it changes it because you can have the fabric laid out, it can be laser cut,
Mm-hmm.
and then it can be put together with these seam machines or these bonding machines. Yeah. And it's still a skill, but it has taken the process way, way down.
Yeah.
It's not any cheaper to do, but it just means that it can be done, like you and I could do it, you know. It's kind of what I'm doing with this building project I'm working on, where I'm developing a system where you and I could build it. And not that you're cutting out the contract or anything, it's just there's an empowering thing when you can do more of it yourself.
Yeah, what is F2R? Tell me that story and the genesis of it.
All right, so this is way off topic.
I love it. No, it's not off topic. This is about Stefan and who he is, and people can relate to that.
So a couple of years before the pandemic, I started toying with this thought, and then especially during the pandemic, of it just had to be, there had to be a much easier way to make buildings, houses. And I'm in the Bay Area, and we have a big homeless problem, and that homeless problem, honestly, it's just tied to one big thing, and it's lack of housing. I mean, things are now going for $1,500, $2,000 a square foot. You know, I mean, the cost of living is going through the roof, but it's because there is just not enough housing to offset that pricing, right? And as a product designer, it just didn't seem reasonable that we couldn't do it better and easier. And you know, when you've been out in the East sourcing materials, and you see the factories, and you see the economies of scale, and you experience what things actually cost and what can be done, and how simple it is to make things when you're actually doing it. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it's simple. I'm just saying that when you break it down to its smallest component, it just makes it a lot more manageable. Then I came up with this way of making homes just out of 5 different panels that can be, they're basically foam injections. So it's a different way of, you could imagine like how people make concrete homes with pre-made concrete blocks.
Yeah.
This is the same, except it's with a foam filler, so it's a bit thick. But it's incredibly, the R value, the insulation factor is enormous. And because it's dense and it's not very heavy, but it has this density, it becomes a structural insulated panel. Yeah. And so with these, you and I can assemble them and disassemble them again. And you can make beautiful structures with it, but it doesn't cost a lot. So I've developed this concept that I'm planning on proving this summer by building a few buildings with it. And I think I can bring the cost down 50%.
You're talking about like the raw construction costs, like pouring the footings, building the walls, and then like it's ready to move in. You just bring it in, turn on the lights, plumbing and everything. Wow.
So basically, it could come in a couple of containers delivered. Then we can assemble it, and you can move in. If it's a big house, maybe in 3 weeks. If it's an ADU, a smaller house, it could be done in 48 hours. And it's not complicated. And then the utilities so I have a whole utility system developed for it, but some of that is going to has a little bit of a horizon, because there are some some ways of reusing water that are not approved in the US yet, but they're gaining approval in Europe.
Like filtration of
And
wastewater, you mean?
yeah, so it's a way of like separating your different waters in your toilet system, your drinking water, and your washing system.
Okay.
So if you live in a very arid area, you could reuse this water. Not the toilet water, but obviously the washing water and the drinking water would come from a separate source, atmospheric condensation.
Okay. Sweet.
And but it just means that now you're no longer tied to the grid. You know, you can be in the suburbs and just be off grid, and just have your own system going. And everything that powers it is solar, and all that technology is down.
Yeah.
So, we have that down pat, how to work that today.
Yeah.
But when you build the panels, it's all integrated. And then your bathroom and your kitchen, it's all basically like plug and play. So you get high-end setups, but you wouldn't get a lot of choice because you get like, here's 3 versions you can choose from.
Yeah.
But these are the ones because that's how we get the cost down.
So you gotta pour footings or lay a slab or whatever first, and this sits on it, or is this part of the system?
Yeah, so there's like 3 elements to building. That's one of them, with the soil reports and what type of footing you need to have. So if you are in a very stable soil, then you can just do blocks that are put in, and if you need a full slab. But that's not the biggest piece of the cost. That's pretty
it's pretty low,
pretty manageable. And then you put your building envelope, which is your house and windows and the framing itself, and that's the piece that I have designed and proposed to. Well, so what I intend to do is own that entire supply chain because that's how we get the cost way down. Because you have to imagine the way we build today, it's very irrational. So like you wouldn't call a car company and say, hey, I want you to come and build me a custom car in my garage. But that's essentially how we build houses today. We get a contractor, an architect, and an engineer, and we say, okay, I want this custom house here on my property. Instead of choosing a house, say, from 35 different models.
And then build upon that.
But with 35 different models, you get a lot of, and we're looking at AI in order to imagine that you own a lot, right? And there's a certain place where you can lay out your house. So the footprint is defined. And now you say, well, I have 2,000 square foot, but I want a 3-bedroom house with 3 bathrooms. And you come up with some criteria for how you want your layout. And then AI will take the panels, it'll take the building code, it'll take the layout of the property, and your 3-bedroom, 3-bath, and it'll design it based on that because there's only so many options inside those parameters. So it'll just spit out those options for you, and then you choose it.
Yeah, you've sold me.
And the way that what's that?
I said you've sold me.
Yeah, so it's not. I mean, this is coming. There's no doubt it's coming. And so I'm doing it, and
Is it just you right now? Do you have some partners? Do you have like?
Well, I have some very smart friends who are in the building industry, and they're looking at it, and I think they're looking, say, okay, build your first one and show us.
Yeah, that's exciting,
and that's why I'm here in Vegas right now, because at the building show to learn a little bit more about business, not business, but about
the industry,
materials and options and things that are already in the marketplace that,
built in
it's just like with the wetsuits and clothing. You want to be at the forefront of materials, because when you see new material developments or you work with a factory on knitting it and getting it done to your specs, that's when all the ideas of how it can be applied come. And you suddenly go, here are some things like I don't really want to talk too much about, but we're talking to the national team about creating tri-suits that are both aero and aquaphobic, which is a pretty difficult thing because there's 3 main things that you have to accomplish. Well, really 4.
Sure.
Being fit, but that's like a given, right? then you want to have something that will go fast in the water. And you want to have something that vents so it doesn't get overheated. And you want something that's aero.
Yeah.
Combining those things into a garment
Very difficult.
is a challenge. That requires some very, very special magical fabrics. And not the way people are doing it right now, I can tell you that. So we're working on that. And it's the same for the building business. You look into ways of doing things and materials, and suddenly you have new ideas for how this could be done so much better.
That's super exciting. And if I'd rather just going back to the house thing really quick, F2R, I looked at the website and it's just kind of the logo right now. When can I see some of this stuff? Because my wife and I are going to be moving soon, and I'd love to jump in on that bandwagon to give it a shot.
Yeah. That's a really good question. I mean, the reason we haven't done more with it is just because my staff have become so busy. Over this last 6 months that they've not had time to. I mean, we have some amazing renderings and information on the concept. I think it'll just be that I'll build this first one here in June or July, and then once that's done, we will also have all the content and the pictures and all the experience from that particular one, and it'll be a proof of concept for me. And then I have a couple other pilots like it that are just at a bigger scale, so I can just show that these same panels, for that first pilot, we're looking at 50, 60 panels, and then what happens when you build a house that has 150 panels, but they're still in those 5 categories. So we just have 40 of this type, 20 of this one, 100 of that one.
Sweet. Well, I'll be on the lookout then. And with anything Synergy related too, I want to see some of these super secretive fabrics and see what's coming down the pike, because it'll be interesting to see innovation in this space, particularly because for the longest time it's just been like, and this is a little different thickness here, it's a little thinner here, and it doesn't seem to be like a whole lot of innovation in this space. So I'm excited to see some of that.
So we're talking to Ryan Bolton, the national coach, and Parker Spencer, the development team coach, how we can best do the actual testing with the athletes, because there's nothing like real life testing.
Right.
Anyone can claim they went to the wind tunnel and did something, and anyone who's been at the wind tunnel knows how that actually works. Because you get a whole bunch of readings, and people kind of selectively choose the ones that work for them.
Right.
So there's a lot of BS that also happens. So we're just really, really interested in empirical evidence, because when you're trying to combine all those things we just talked about, with the aero and the aquaphobic and the climate control, it's very likely that we're going to have different suits for different conditions.
Humid, dry.
So almost like you're waxing your skis, depending on how the snow is. And I think that's where it's going to go.
Good.
So luckily, we already have a lot of these connections with fabric vendors, and also we, just having been in it for so long, we have ideas, because we used to have a factory in our warehouse. We used to make sublimated clothing. We used to do big silicone heat transfer work. There's a lot of these super fast suits from Speedo and everything. It's actually not the material that's
coating.
It's the coating, exactly. So we have experiences with this too, and then you got to make that safe, and you got to make sure things are inside the FINA parameters. There's a lot of things that go on. So it is a little complicated after all. But we know all these steps, and we know we can get it done. And I love this challenge, because to me, that's like, there's also a competitive factor in that. And it's great aiming to be the best. Why not? It's certainly possible in our sport.
For sure. I mean, it's still so young compared to other sports, like you were saying back in this late 70s, 80s. I mean, we're not even a century into this yet, barely half a century. So it'll be interesting to see where things go for sure. So last 2 final questions for you. First one, when is your next race?
I'm nursing a little running injury,
Okay.
but I think I'll just start doing we're going to a lot of events this year, and I think I'll just start doing the swim and the bike
Okay.
for all of those. And then as this running injury heals, I'll start finishing up with the run.
Sweet. Yeah.
But I think my A race is going to be that one in Moorea
Okay.
in Tahiti. That's
Yeah, Xterra.
it's not till October, so I have a long time for it. So I think I'll be completely healed for that.
Yeah.
But it's also a race that I have a shot to get on the podium on the overall, and it's that kind of stuff
that drives you. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's exciting. Well, all the best for that, for sure. The last question: would you consider yourself more of an entrepreneur or more of an athlete?
It's a good question. When you grow up, and I think a lot of triathletes can relate to this, if you have always done athletics, it's such a it's such a big piece of your identity. And the entrepreneur side, a lot of times I've started many businesses, sold them, but I never thought that I was a founder or anything like that. It was more like this just is kind of, I don't think I'm employable. So
I love the honesty.
Yeah, so I just don't know that I could do that type of work.
Yeah.
And because I'm so self-driven, having your own business is just the only way. So I guess it is entrepreneurial. So those are my two big identity things, but I don't think of it in terms of that.
Yeah, it's all wrapped into one package.
It is, yeah. And but the athletics thing is definitely, it's just, I think anyone who goes into triathlon, they're like a Weimaraner dog on the inside. You got to get out and do a run, or you got to get out. You can't, like, if you go 2-3 days without a workout, you fall into a hole, and it's a horrible place to be. You don't want to be, you can't be that person, you know.
For sure.
So choose a partner who understands that about you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, super important.
So they know that when you're done working, you just need a 20-minute run or whatever, to reset in order to go on to the next thing.
Yeah, there's so much to that. I've done this type of therapy called EMDR therapy, but it's basically dealing with things you've dealt with in the past using bilateral stimulation, and there's a number of different things you can do that with. But running, swimming, and biking, they're all a form of bilateral stimulation, meaning both sides of the body. So I think it's really awesome for people to just do that, even if it's walking, because you can. It allows you to get in contact with both sides of your brain and process through the day's stuff, like going for that run. It's not just to go for the run, although it is amazing. Yeah. There's so much you can do while in those zones.
You're 1,000% right. And I think that's something you have to know about yourself so you can also nurture it. And I lived for so many years with guilt going out for a run or a bike, feeling I should be back with my family and everything. But I worked from home, so I was always with my family anyway, and I spent lots of quality time with it. But you shouldn't feel bad about something that is so deeply inherent in your personality or in your person that you do have to nurture, and you have to accept that that's who you are and what you do.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, Stefan, thank you for jumping on and sharing a little bit of your story. We'll have to do it again sometime. There's so much to your life that we're not able to cover in just an hour and 15 minutes, but I really appreciate you coming on and being vulnerable in that way.
Yeah, thank you, Seth. It was a pleasure.
Good deal. Just want to make a super huge shout out. Thank you so much to Stefan for jumping on this podcast and coming in to tell a little bit of his story. If you listen to this point in the podcast, just want to say thank you so much. And wherever you're listening, make sure to go like, comment, subscribe, give a review, all those things. It helps us grow. We are going to actually be doing another episode with Stefan in not too far of the future. Because as soon as we quit recording, I asked him some more vulnerable questions. And because of me, I didn't fully just let him know, I guess, what was coming in the podcast and what was expected, what was not. He felt like he wasn't able to be super vulnerable. We were going to focus just on triathlon, but I let him know that, hey, this is not just a triathlon podcast, although we talk about a lot about that stuff. We want to get into the deeper sides of life and let you know who Stefan is, what he's gone through, and he has been through a lot as a human, and he has a lot of really amazing philosophies on life that just, I think, produce success, but also healing in very hard situations. So we're going to do another episode with him very soon. I will make sure to throw that up on social media and everything as well. But just make sure to check out this episode, but then the future one as well, because that one's going to be super, super awesome. All right. Thanks, guys. Catch you in the next one.